It's not too far from here in Watts.
When our son was killed at 3 years old, he saw my wife and ran to her, and he was saying, "Mommy, mommy," and a woman came down the street and hit him. And so that changed our entire life. Is the reason why I get up every morning. Because I understand my why, I understand my purpose, is to try to make people's lives better.
I believe that each bill that I author and sign are bills that's going to affect this community and the community I was born and raised in all of California in a very positive way.
Mike is an incredible leader. He started off as a youth pastor, then as a city commissioner, a city councilman, and now he's in the state legislature as assemblyman.
People want to see their elected officials. They want to be able to reach out and know that you go through the same exact thing that they go through. My mother cleaned rich people's homes. My father was a truck driver. My parents taught me the meaning of hard work, and if you work hard, it's going to pay off in the long run. For someone who grew up, who had a learning disability, who spoke with a stutter and thought that I wasn't intelligent enough to actually go to school, feeling very insignificant around friends who've gone on to go to college, that I didn't have that ability. Going on, graduating from the University of Phoenix, that gave me tremendous confidence in believing that I can. If someone can grow up in Watts and defy all the odds and the statistics that showed that I should be dead, in gangs, in drugs, and in prison, if you believe in yourself, you can change the trajectory and create a paradigm shift that will catapult you to your level of greatness. Each of us can create the history we want. Black History Month is not just about the past. It's about creating a new future, and it's the future that calls people to dream again. I want that when the history books are written, that it will reflect that this little boy who grew up in South Los Angeles made a difference.
Which affects the brain, they are as a result of some proteins going bad. Okay? Normally, these proteins are supposed to perform some important functions, but things can go wrong, and then you get a disease like Alzheimer's or Parkinson's. Okay? So my research, so the thing is, how do I connect this to the infectious disease that you are familiar with? So it turns out that if the proteins that are present in your brain goes bad, it's not different from when you have an external protein from a virus that is problematic going inside of you, okay? Even though your proteins are supposed to function properly, once they go bad, it's not different from something invading you, okay? So we use the idea that is established from vaccination to try to treat neurodegenerative diseases, okay? So in my lab, what I try to do is to design new proteins that have never been seen in nature, okay, capable of training our soldiers, antibodies, to fight neurodegenerative diseases. And I do this using established principles of physics, okay, and emerging technologies in artificial intelligence, okay, and powerful computing machines. So that's essentially what I do. So my goal is to design therapeutic proteins for neurodegenerative diseases. Thank you for your time.
Okay, I'll welcome our next speaker, Dr. Bono.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for being here and hearing all the wonderful stuff we're doing. I'm supposed to look, am I good here? All right. All right, let me share a little bit about the research I'm doing related to social emotional learning. What I'm trying to do is establish ways to build character organically through social relationships and communicating and sort of taking a chance on each other. And so I'm going to share some of the high school intervention research that I've been doing around gratitude practices. So a quick rundown on the psychology of gratitude. What is it? You know, it seems simple at first, but if you really think about it, we can be grateful for many things. And so, you know, in one way, it's about recognizing something positive or a positive person, a benefactor. But you could also just acknowledge or respond positively for these things, these gifts, and these positive people in our lives. So anyway, there's many ways to experience it, but some of the things that have fascinated me about it is that I believe that character can be practiced in natural ways. And so when we look at the research on gratitude, there's a theory that it serves a moral purpose. One is a moral barometer. So when we experience gratitude, it's telling us this is an important thing or an important person. Pay attention and make sure that you make your decisions differently around this maybe in the future. So I have some bullet animations, so I'm going to put you to work, Matt. A second function, moral function, is it serves as a moral reinforcer, and teachers can really understand this part of it. When somebody is thankful, when a student is thankful, what that does is it rewards the benefactor. It reinforces them from doing something kind again, right? Like if you've ever felt burned out, you know, it just takes one student who felt like you really impacted them, and hearing that, you know, can recharge you. That's what gratitude can do as a moral reinforcer. And then thirdly, it's also a moral motivator, and this is interesting because it could be done reciprocally. When you are grateful for a benefactor's help, not only are you more likely to help the benefactor in return, but you could pass it on to other people, so it could spread. So anyway, there's various moral functions like this. Next. And so one of the things that I was curious about is, well, how do we practice gratitude in a way that's impactful on mental health? And so I looked at some of the research, and one of the randomized controlled trials by Marty Seligman and others found that actually thanking other people through what's called a gratitude visit, thanking people who have been significant benefactors in your life, is one of the most powerful forms of practice. There's recent research showing that we have biases against thanking others. So we got to sort of overcome those biases. We think it's going to be awkward and it's not going to matter to others, and so we just don't do it. So anyway, that's what I was saying there. And then research by Sonia Lyubomirsky over at UC Riverside finds that, you know, just like diets, there's no one-size-fits-all. What you want to do is have a sustainable approach and mix up the practices in ways that are enjoyable and intrinsically motivating. And when it comes to adolescence, David Yeager's research finds that you could boomerang if you don't see the social utility in it. If a teenager doesn't see the social utility in a practice, then it could backfire. So it has to be relevant to their daily lives. So that's what I wanted to figure out. How do we make gratitude relevant to teenagers' daily lives? So I published this Thanks curriculum for teens and tweens. You could just search, Google it, Thanks curriculum, published by the Greater Good Science Center at UC Berkeley. And then I used the science of gratitude through my curriculum. And then I teamed up with this nonprofit, Give Thanks, which is like a social media app that allows people to thank, but it's done privately. So you could thank people, and they could thank you back, and you could then graph out the thank yous you give and receive and reflect on that, which can give adolescents some interesting insights for reflecting. So this was essentially the intervention that I tried out, understanding why gratitude matters and how to do it, and then giving them a way to practice it authentically through this app. Next. Anyway, so there's our sample, but to leave some time for the good stuff, I'm going to move on. But it was basically 2 high schools in Oakland, very similar demographically to our university. And next, you can see some of the results of this 6-week intervention that basically so we had control classrooms that did not use the intervention for 6 weeks. And then we had the experimental classes that did use the curriculum and the app for 6 weeks. And then we did a pre and post comparison. And you could see these are all the significant effects we found. So anyway, basically, just about every indicator of well-being, whether it's your positive or negative moods, seem to improve. But something that has not been found in research to this point is a gratitude intervention that not taught by psychologists, just teachers in the classroom using this resource. This 6-week intervention seemed to have improved mental health, specifically depression and anxiety symptoms went down in the course of 6 weeks for the experimental classes. Anyway, it's first evidence that I've seen about mental health benefits just with a gratitude practice intervention, right? Anyway, these are sort of small to see. I'm welcome to, you're welcome to, if you're interested, I'm happy to share. But, students can thank the teacher. They can thank other peers. Teachers can thank the student. The janitor can thank a student. The student can thank anybody. If the whole school signs up, you could thank each other, and then it saves it, and then you can graph it out. And you could figure out how you matter to other people and the issues that you're working on and who has your back. Issues that I think are important for adolescents to figure out how to start doing earlier in life. And anyway, just some other results. I used AI, ChatGPT 4.0, to analyze the 2,600 thank you notes that were exchanged during the 6 weeks, and it sort of blew me away. These were some of the themes that I found in the thank you notes. Again, these aren't self-reports. These were natural thank yous when you felt comfortable sending a thanks on your own time and in your own terms. These were some of the themes that came out. Instrumental support for academic endeavors, emotional and social support. There were 5 themes total. The third was norms of positive influence and encouragement, norms of leadership and taking initiative. So, the higher achievers are also supported by thanking. And then lastly, joy and humor and just a little bit of levity in everyday life. That's what thanking brought, beyond just journaling in your own, in your own book or in your own head. It's the power of reaching out to others and taking a chance and being real with others. And that's the intervention practice that I've helped develop. And it shows some of the power of just gratitude when it's practiced authentically. And how that can help adolescents in their development. So anyway, in conclusion, gratitude interventions can support mental health, and I'm looking for. So what's my ask for you all? I'm looking for schools, K through 12 schools, that want to transform how they teach and relate to students and how we engage students. Ideally, there would be no intervention. Ideally, our academic goals would be supported by thanking on the regular, right, every day. And so I'm looking for a school that would love to do this year-long, school-wide. And then I'd love to look at some hard data and see how standardized scores and conduct and all that stuff changes. It has yet to be done to the level that I'd like, and that's what I'm looking for. Anyway, thank you, and I hope this has been interesting. I suppose I should show the rest. Thanks.
I'm sorry to interrupt the show today, but today we have a distinguished guest, former student here, an alum from the physics department, and now he is the mayor of the city of Hawthorne. So, Alex, will you come here and say hi to people?
Hey guys, thank you guys for allowing me to say something. I know I wasn't on the schedule, but it really feels great to see how far Cal State Dominguez has come along. Let me tell you, I spent a good 5-6 years here, and I mean, I used to study on the 4th floor. We used to go to the cafeteria when it was over there in the small college area. I mean, things have changed so much, and you guys are blessed with all the technology that you have right now. What Cal State Dominguez Hills did for me was taught me the discipline to be able to do a lot of things in my life. Not just science, but in other areas that I was interested in. I received my bachelor's in physics here at Cal State Dominguez, and I received my, I continued at Cal State Long Beach for my master's. And I worked at Raytheon for about 9 years as a physics engineers, and then I worked at L3 Communications also as well for about 4 years. And now my day job, I know he said mayor and all this stuff, but my day job is teaching math and science to incarcerated adults in the county jails. So that's what I do, and I love that job. And but Dominguez Hills prepared me with the discipline to be able to do that. Yes, you're right, be a mayor. And then I also I'm a assistant part-time professor at El Camino in the physics department. So I get to do a lot of things, but it just feels good to be back. I see a lot of you guys are all excited, bright. Take advantage of all the resources. I had the choice to either go here or UCLA. I decided to come here because I know I was going to be not just the number, but be paid special attention to. I was able to work with the professors, build a relationship with them, and I was very excited. They found internships for me very easily because, you know, we were the small focus for them, as opposed, like to say, being just a number. And so I think you guys are blessed. Take advantage of that. You got great teachers. You guys are expanding your programs. That's what I'm seeing. And man, I remember when I started physics in 1989. Jesus Christ. That still look okay, though, right? It was a BA. It was a Bachelor's of Arts. I went to Cal Poly Pomona, and I said, oh, man, you know, I wish I was back at Dominguez. And sure enough, in about a year after I left, it changed into a BS. So imagine, things have progressed so much here. So now look, you got a 2 buildings. You got programs. I heard the electrical engineering program. I hear you got a systems engineering program. And God, Jesus. I mean, you guys are blessed to be a student. Hopefully the food is better than what we used to have back then. So thank you guys so much. Appreciate you guys.
Thank you very much. Okay, so back to our regular program activities. So next is Dr. Singhal from biology, and she's going to be talking about snakes, my favorite subject. Really? No.
All right. Hopefully I'll convince Leo that snakes are totally awesome. So that would be the short title of my talk. My name is Sonal Singhal, and I'm a professor in the biology department. All right, so this is a project that I've been working on for a very long time, and our goal of this project was to understand how snakes evolved. And the first thing I need you to know is that snakes are actually a type of lizard. So this is a very simple family tree of snakes and lizards. And if you look at it, you can see that snakes are nested or contained within all the other species that we commonly think of as lizards. Things like geckos, monitor lizards, which includes the Komodo dragon, and chameleons. So step one is we had to build a family tree of lizards and snakes. And I joke around, I actually started this part of the project the week before I got engaged. So I joke around, this is like the longest relationship I've ever had, was me and this phylogeny. And so there's about 11,000 species of snakes, and our tree represented about 7,000 of them, which might not sound, you're like, oh, that's 70%, but it actually takes a lot of work because some of these snakes and lizards are only found in one remote place. So to get the DNA we need from these animals is a massive undertaking. So after we did that, we measured a lot of different aspects of snakes and lizards biology. I'm not going to go into all the details, but we measured a lot of different things. I'm going to focus on 2 really cool aspects of their biology, which is limblessness and diet. So what we found, we analyzed 60,000 stomach contents of different snakes and lizards to understand what they eat. And what we found is that they have very different diets. So this figure shows the diet makeup across 2 different variables of lizards and snakes. Every dot right now is one species of lizard, And the size of the dot represents how many different types of things it eats. The closer two dots are to one another, the more similar their diet is. So you can see all the lizards are eating pretty much the same thing, and if you're curious what they're eating, you might see some lizards in your backyard. They're eating a lot of insects, mainly just insects. Now, I've added on all the data from snakes, and you can see snakes are eating a whole bunch of different things that lizards are not eating. They are eating some of the same things that lizards are eating, but they're eating a whole bunch of different things that lizards can't even touch. So you might be wondering, what are those things? So I'm just going to give you some examples of my favorite snakes. This is a sidewinder snake that lives in western United States, and it has this really cool movement where it can slither through the sand by winding back and forth. And it's particularly adept at capturing small mammals and then using its venom to immobilize those small mammals and eat them. Okay, this is actually my favorite snake, though. I say this about every animal, though. Like, every animal is my favorite. This is a sea snake, and this animal is able to swim in the ocean for long periods of time and catch animals that live under ocean to eat them, in particular things like fish and eels. And one really cool thing about this species is, if you can tell, the back of its tail is a little bit flattened, and it almost serves like a paddle, which allows it to efficiently move through the water. And then last but not least is the red belly snake, which has some really cool adaptations to eat things like slugs and snails. And they actually have specialized teeth that allow them to dig into a snail's, what is that called? Like, their body, their snail's shell, and scoop out their guts to eat. So we were able to find all this evidence that snakes are eating completely different diets from lizards. And I don't want to go into the boring statistical details, but we did a lot of fancy statistical modeling to look at how diet is changing across lizards and snakes and identify if there's been any big transitions in what they eat. And when we do that, we find there's a huge jump in diet at the early origin of snakes. So another trait we looked at was limblessness. So a lot of people, that's probably the most notable thing about snakes we think about, is that they don't have limbs. But it turns out that losing limbs is particularly common among lizards and snakes. And different species of lizards and snakes have lost their limbs over 50 times. So there's the dibamid lizards, which are shown here. My favorite are the pygopod geckos, which live in Australia. So these are geckos that don't have limbs. There's also the Lorsta skinks, which also happen to live in Australia and have been a focus of a lot of my other research. There's the Bachia lizards, which live in the neotropics, so parts of South America. And then finally, of course, the lizards. The snakes themselves have lost limbs. But if we look at how snakes and lizards have lost their limbs, they've lost it in very different ways. So this data shows on the x-axis is a presacral vertebral count, which is a fancy way of saying how many vertebrae do you have below your neck. And on the y-axis is elongation index, which basically means like how much are you like a tube. So the higher that value, the more you are like a tube. And what you can see is lizards, which are shown in blue, are all following this nice straight line. They pretty much gain vertebrae and become more like a tube. Whereas snakes are doing a whole bunch of different things. You have some snakes that have a lot of vertebrae but aren't that much like tubes. You have other snakes that have fewer vertebrae and are a lot like tubes. You have everything in between. And again, if we apply our fancy statistical modeling, what we can see is that snakes have this big jump in how fast their limblessness has evolved. All right, so this third part of our study, this was a big study, it took us a very long time, was we measured how fast new snake and lizard species arise. So we used that family tree I showed you earlier, and you can actually use it to measure how quickly a new species is formed. And what we found is that snakes, which are shown on the right here, form new species almost 30 times as fast, almost 10 times as, well in this case, almost 10 times as fast as geckos, which are shown on the left. And so, like I just said, this means in 30 million years, if you come back, none of us will be around, but if you were able to come back in 30 million years, there will only be one new gecko species, but there's going to be 10 new snake species. So there's just a lot more snakes. In some ways, you can think of this as snakes are a lot more evolutionarily successful than lizards. So when we look at all these data together, what we understood is that snakes, even though they're lizards, they're evolving completely differently from all other lizards. They're forming a lot new species a lot more quickly. Their diet is completely different. They have this limblessness, but they do it in a different way. And what we argue is there's nothing about the evolution of lizards that would have allowed you to predict the rise of snakes. Like nothing, right? Like there's no way you could have predicted that something like snakes would have arisen. And the cool thing about this is there's actually a lot of parallels across the tree of life. Something like a bat, right? There's no way we could have predicted the rise of bats, or there's no way we could have predicted the rise of flowering plants or angiosperms. So this is a common pattern across the tree of life, where there's these one-off evolutionary events that have given rise to remarkable diversity that surrounds us. And I just want to thank my collaborators, and I want to especially acknowledge that this research was funded in part by Dominguez Hill's Research, Scholarship, and Creative Activities Grant Program. So thanks to Dominguez Hills.
Okay, next we'll have Dr. Pong.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Ryan Pong from the math department. So I want to make a case for mathematics. So just a quick show of hand. How many of you hate mathematics? Oh, I have one. Physicists hate mathematics, but only one. So my job is easy. All right. Okay, so I want to say something about math. So math is useful. I mean, we just saw biologists use a lot of math, right? But that's graph, data, and so on. I think all the departments in CNBS need math at some point. So long story short, math works, okay? And the next thing I want to tell you about math is beautiful, all right? So well, it's not really a graph. I don't know whether you can see it. So you see a series, right? So 1 minus 3rd plus 5th minus 1/7, right? So it's an alternate sum of the reciprocal of odd numbers. Anyone know the answer? Matt knows, but I won't ask him to tell us. So it's a quarter of pi. Okay, it's the circle, right? The circumference over the diameter is pi. So for math people, this is very beautiful. I mean, it's not like a pretty diagram, but why pi show up, right? These are very nice number, 1, 3, 5, 7, right? They are just integers. But pi is very geometric, right? It's related to the circle. And it's very, well, we have a name, it's called transcendental. It's very hard to get a hold of pi, okay? And they are that related, okay? So the next beautiful thing I want to show you is this sum. So this is a sum of the reciprocals of the square. So 1/4 plus 1/9, and so on. Okay, so any guess? So this number is roughly 1.5, but again, it's related to pi. So this number is pi squared over 6. Pi again show up, okay? And the next identity I want to show you is this. So you can see this is a generalization of the previous one, right? The previous that all have 2s, and now I replace it by a formula, by a variable s. So this has, so the left side is an infinite sum, and the right side is an infinite product, okay? And how on earth they're related? So they're related by something that all of you know. Every number has a prime factorization, and this lead to, this is the left side is the famous Riemann-Zeta functions, and so this is actually how Euler have this lead us to the study of prime. And I want to say one more thing about this, right? The first identity people here learn from calculus, we taught all these things. So the second identity, we learned it from complex analysis, also a math class. And the third one, we did it in the number theory class. Okay, all right. So the last thing I want to tell you is, convince you is math is fun. So I won't be able to tell you my own research, at least not in a few minutes, okay? But I'm going to give you guys some things that you can show in your Christmas party, okay? All right, so now the first thing is some number is trapezoidal. Well, what do I mean by that? Let's see the next slide. So 12 is trapezoidal. 12 is 3 plus 4 plus 5, right? So you can see the trapezoid. Everyone? Sort of, right? Not really trapezoid, but, you know, sort of the left side, right? But some are not, okay? So for example, number 8. You can't write number 8 as a sum of consecutive numbers, right? You can 4 plus 4, but they're not consecutive, right? Everyone get this? So the first thing to ask is, well, which numbers are trapezoid? All right? So let's give it a try, right? So the first two cannot, right? 1 is 1, 2 is 1 plus 1, so it's not a sum of consecutive. But 3 we can, right? 3 we can. How about 4? Can we? Can we do that? No. 4 you can't. 5? 5 is 2 plus 3, right? How about 6? Anyone? 1, 2, 3, right? Okay. 7? Consecutive. 3 plus 4. Yes, very good. 8? No, you can't, right? Think about it. Think about it. You can't, right? 9? 4, 5, and 2, 3, and 4, right? So more than one way. Okay, good. And then the rest you can see, right? So we can see, you can play this game, right? Think about it, right? These are all the sum. And then the next one. All right, so now, hold on. If you see this, do you have a guess? Do you know which ones are trapezoid and which ones are not? Any guess? So 1, 2, 4, 8, and 16, you can't, right? So the guess would be everything you can except the powers of 2, right? So this is a very typical way of doing math, right? You get the questions, and you just try a few things, and then you formulate a guess. So conjecture is a math way to say an educated guess, all right? So the next thing is, let me tell you how, okay? Why, right? That's the thing that mathematicians always want to know. Why, right? You observe this, can I show you that everything other than the powers of 2s are sum of consecutive integers, okay? So we can have this, right? So if you have more time, I will ask you guys, but let's just pick one. 45 is nothing special, but just not a power of 2, okay? So give me a factor of 45, right? For example, we can take 15, okay? 15 is an odd factor of 45, right? 15 divided 45. So now, hold on. This is the trick, okay? Think about how can I sum to 0 with 15 consecutive integers. I have 15 consecutive integers, but the sum is 0. What are they? So you need to use some negative numbers, right? So these are those. There's only one way to write 0 as a sum of consecutive. 15 consecutive, right? Here are 15 numbers, right? 7 times 2 is 14 plus 0, right? So now 45 divided by 15 is 3, right? 3 is the quotient. So let's write 15 3 here. Okay, so what's 15 3 sum to? Sum to 45, right? Sum to 45, the next slide. Okay, so now you add vertically. Right, 0 plus 45 is 45. Everyone? You add vertically. Now you have some negative numbers, right? But then the next, you cancel some. Now you get it. So 45 is 5 all the way up to 10, right? This is proof. Nothing special about 45, nothing special about 15. You can do it for any number that has an odd factor other than 1. And so this shows that every numbers that other than the powers of 2s are the sum of consecutive integers, are trapezoidal. Okay? All right, so this is the table, and then in fact I show a little bit more, right? So you can use 3 as the odd factor. So 3, try to sum to 0 with 3 numbers, right? So -1, 0, 1, right? Everyone? That's the only way to write 0 as a sum of 3 consecutive numbers. And then the 15 now is the quotients, right? So if you add 15 to -1, 0, and 1, then you get 14, 15, and 16, right? 14 plus 15 plus 16 is 45. So this tells you that every odd factors of the number give you a way of writing it as a trapezoid. Okay, so the next slide just tells you 45 has that many ways of writing it as a sum of consecutive. All right, so this is just the beginning of something. I mean, if you're interested, we can talk about it afterwards. All right, so this is the same. And then the last two slides I want to say is in mathematics, we always, well, very often we use geometric intuitions, like visualize things, okay? So here's the challenge, right? So I have a number, right? That's not a power of 2. So in other words, the number can be written as a rectangle, right? With an odd side. So 45 is like 15 3 rows, right? So now what do I have? I have 18 here, right? So how can you turn, think for a second, how can you turn this rectangle into a trapezoid? All right? So the next thing, well, you can label this, and then you turn. You just flip it over. Everyone, you see that? You break in the middle, and then go like a stair, right? And then you flip it over. Now that's one catch, right? Usually the geometric intuitions doesn't always give you all the cases. So what happens if the side is too short, right? So the next 2 slides, yes. Then, well, you just look at it the other way. So this time is also a trapezoid, right? But instead of the parallel side here, it's here. Everyone? So you also get a trapezoid this way. All right? All right, so I guess I'm done. Thank you.
Okay, and last up, we've got Dr. Kiontash.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Thanks for being here and attentive through these talks. So this is a little different vein from what some of the other presentations have been. This is highlighting some student experiences that we've had for our graduates in the past doing study abroad in our department. And these have been some very inspiring and exciting trips that we've done. So I just wanted to highlight a few things that, some of the experiences that our students have had in the last few years. And so these, in this case, I was with this group of students in 2018, and we were in Bulgaria, okay? So next to these interesting rock formations. All right. The class is actually the study abroad opportunities that we did. Were for 5 years apart in Bulgaria before the pandemic and after. And I taught a class, a special topics class in geography, and I took geography and earth science students to Bulgaria, and it was titled Water Sustainability and Geodiversity in the Balkans, which is a mountain range passing through Bulgaria in Eastern Europe. And so we focused on the physical geographic features that we would find examples of in those places to study, parallels to what we might find in California or other parts of the world. And then also learn about the culture there and the concepts of geodiversity. That is, what examples of the natural world are present that are unique enough that deserve protection. Some things are very common that we find in the natural world, boulders all over the place. Other things are quite rare. And so we looked for examples of these sort of phenomena in Bulgaria. And this course was offered both times in collaboration with a overseas provider known as Stone and Compass. And that, interestingly, that company was founded by a CSUDH alumnus named Rob Goodwin. I actually had him as a student in my class years ago. He took a meteorology course with me, and he was very dynamic, energized person, very enthusiastic about life, and went on to work for the United Nations and start this company. And then he came back, like some of you guys, to Dominguez Hills and realized, I learned a lot here. This was a great place. And then he tried to bring in current students, which succeeded. So I'm going to show you some pictures from that trip. So Bulgaria, for those of you who are geographically challenged and wondering where is Bulgaria, okay, so it's here in southeastern Europe, right next to the Black Sea, and that was our destination. You might wonder where Bulgaria, how we actually came up with that location amongst all the choices. And it actually had a variety of reasons. It's an interesting thing how Stone and Compass got started in Bulgaria, and it was kind of random, actually. The founder decided, as he told the story, he got inspired and knew he wanted to do study abroad and outreach with people and students, but he didn't know where to begin. And so he was talking with his wife about it one day, and she said, honey, you just got to pick a place and go for it. And he's like, all right. And he had a world map on the wall, and he grabbed a dart, and he closed his eyes, and he threw the dart at the world map, and it landed in Bulgaria. He said, well, I guess I'm going to go check out Bulgaria. He went there, and things fell into place. He actually found an opportunity, bought a facility, and got started. So it wouldn't have to be, if he'd thrown a little differently, it might have been Brazil or something else. But it was Bulgaria, but we were all the better for it. So at this location in Bulgaria, we stayed in a small village, actually. And there were different itineraries for the two trips that I took in 2018 and 2023, which is great, a little variety. But what remained the same for all the experiences were fantastic and remarkable natural features. We saw some cultural sites that were really inspiring, particularly because there's such a long history there, thousands of years of human occupation there. We had fantastic, very reliable transportation, translators, everything as soon as we landed were taken care of for us, which is very comforting for students. And then some delicious food, which we all enjoyed. Ultimately, it was a real high-impact educational practice for the students who got to go and participated. So this was our travels around Bulgaria. In 2018, which is here in the blue, we kind of did I would say kind of more of the eastern side of the country, and then in 2023, it was more in the west. The place here, you see, and I'll just point to it. Right here, where that star is, it was our headquarters, right kind of in the center of the country. It's a small village in this area called Stolat. Okay, but we made excursions first around the capital, Sofia, which once was a Roman city, and it has a long history. We learned a little bit about the culture. That wasn't the purpose, obviously, of us going for a geographic focus and an earth science focus, but once we were there, we were going to take it in. There were some fantastic mineral baths in the city, which were quite interesting. So we toured around Sofia. We then went and saw a really spectacular natural feature known as Devatashka Cave. It's this huge cave with these impressive skylights, probably the cave complex, just to give you a scale, I'd say it was at least twice the length of this building. So it was enormous, with these huge arching natural skylights in it. The height of it is, they're probably 100 or so feet up. Apparently there have been some Hollywood movies filmed at this location, but it is quite remarkable. So we looked at At that, as well as its colony, has like 30,000 bats living in it. So we could look back into the darkness and sort of smell the bats, but we didn't see them. They're protected. We also did whitewater rafting, okay? Because why not, right? But it's also, you know, these sorts of things I think are very important when we talk about natural features. There are merits to natural features that they have a financial and they also have a social benefit that isn't just measured on with hydroelectric potential or how much water can you pump out for agriculture. There's other benefits. And so this was a particular river in the draining out of the Purin Mountains we went to. This was in 2023. The student on the back right, I don't know if Dawn is still here. I was talking with, there she is. Okay, so she was one of the participants in Bulgaria, so I'm glad to see that she made it tonight. And okay, better? Okay, so, and Bulgaria is culturally very rich with water, and they're very, it's kind of a cultural thing about drinking, you know, fresh mountain water, a lot of springs and groundwater reserves, and this is a place where there was some springs built into the mountain, freely flowing drinkable water, potable water in quite a remote area. Okay, they've had this sort of thing for hundreds of years around the country. Okay. There's cultural sites. This was a famous castle in the historic town of Veliko Turnovo. We went to that because it was kind of one of the must-sees in the area, so we spent an afternoon around this fortress. It's all sorts of interesting stories, historical stories about empires and dynasties being overturned by battles on the cliffs and people falling off the cliffs into the river hundreds of feet below, and there's whole interesting dimensions to the Bulgarian culture there, which we took in for at least an afternoon before we went off to see our next geodiversity item, which was a set of travertine waterfalls. These aren't real common, this type of waterfall, and these were present, though, in an area known as Krishuna, and travertine is a form of limestone, and it formed, in this case, the terrain by which the water is falling over was built by the water. Okay, the terrain was built by the precipitation of calcium carbonate out of solution, which is different. We normally think of rivers and water eroding the landscape to make a drop. In this case, it built the terrain, which is much of the area is known as a karst environment with a lot of limestone. So that was interesting to students. Another thing that has to do with sustainability, I found great interest in this, went there for the first time. This is known as an ethnographic museum. It's basically a modern-day village that was constructed by artisans. The Bulgarians went around the country to find all of the old masters who still knew how to do things the old ways, how to construct a stone roof. Like, I recently had to put a new roof on my house. I don't know about you, but I had a very hard time just finding a contractor could do it with asphalt shingles. I can't imagine if I needed to find somebody that can put on a stone slab roof on my house. But if that were done, that roof would last for centuries. Okay, so there's these sort of, you know, old crafts. The Bulgarian government decided to pull these artisans in, and they had all these ingenious examples of sustainable uses of crafts and water. In this case, this is right here, this is a washing machine, kind of hydraulically powered washing machine that people could throw their clothes in, and the water is so agitated, it comes through quite violently. Probably a little hard on you. I wouldn't put a real delicate piece of fabric in there, like if you had a real nice silk robe or something, I wouldn't recommend it. But if you could throw an old pair of jeans in there, they would get blasted hydraulically, in a few minutes they'd be perfectly clean. No soap necessary. So they had examples of this. They had water-powered sawmills, water-powered rug shakers, all sorts of things using some ingenious, sustainable power. So it was interesting for all of us to get exposed to that sort of thing. Roman ruins, which students got to see, ruins of a city that was excavated. It was built in the year 106 by the Roman Emperor Trajan, and there are enormous slabs in this road that was engineered. Each one of the stones is probably about 2 or 3 tons in there. Somehow, without hydraulic lifts and without bulldozers and backhoes, the Romans built these roads that lasted for millennia. Okay, so the last slides I'll show you is geographically, we're interested in seeing some examples of glacial erosion in the mountain environments. And so these were a series of lakes. They're called the 7 Rila Lakes. They're in the Rila Mountains, which is sort of in the southwestern part of Bulgaria. But these are examples, these sort of like a string of pearls lakes. They're known as Paternoster Lakes. And this was a fine example of those. We hiked around to 5 of those 7 lakes, spent all day hiking around and seeing them, and it was quite remarkable looking at most of the students. Some of the students have hardly ever been around snow, let alone actual glaciers, okay, which are much harder to approach, but there were small glaciers here which we approached and got a firsthand exposure to the sort of intense erosion that glacial environments can possess, okay? Lastly, we were in an area, there was a United Nations World Heritage Site. We went to the fantastic Rila Monastery, which is famous for its intense, provocative sort of paintings, many of which are sort of intended to scare people into following the faith. Like, if you don't do things, look at what will happen to you. And there's all sorts of interesting images of devils attacking people and that sort of thing. So it's some of the Eastern Orthodox imagery is quite different than we see coming out of the Roman Catholic Church. So we got a little exposure to that, okay? So that's all for my talk. Okay. Thank you, alumni, for coming.
Yep, so that concludes all of our talks. So feel free to continue if you haven't checked out the posters and the tables. There's also tours of the upstairs. If you haven't done that, I would encourage you to do so. Thank you.